It's the Kingsman.
So I'd like to remind all of our weekly listeners that manners maketh man. This week we're talking about Kingsman 2, The Golden Circle. This is Nick, and I'm joined today by
Zach.
Becca.
And Dan.
Keep in mind, this is a different Dan from the normal Dan. So don't get confused and don't get used to it. He's our wild card.
Wild card.
Truck full of gasoline. Let's go around in a circle. Did you get what you expected out of Kingsman 2?
I got exactly what I expected from Kingsman 2, but because I expected it, I didn't enjoy it as much as Kingsman 1.
That's fair. I feel like this movie is the literal definition of style over substance, and it was a lot of fun things in a row, but I don't know if it really amounted to anything in particular. Not saying it wasn't extraordinarily fun. We're having a Werther's Original Butterscotch break.
Sponsored this week by Werther's Original.
Werther's Original. Put them in your mouth.
Grandmas love them.
Alright, Becca, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of both. I feel like I kind of expected it, but I also didn't. First 20 minutes threw me for a loop, but after that, I was totally happy. And as soon as Elton John showed up, I was like, you know what? I love this movie. It's great.
Yeah, I feel
It's
like
my favorite.
it's wrong to say you didn't like it because Elton John was in it.
I know. I
So,
feel like it's a sin.
yeah. Any
so-
bad thing I feel like I saw in the movie is completely negated by the fact that Elton John was in it.
Yeah.
Especially any scene with Elton John makes you forget the ridiculousness of anything else.
Okay, that's fair.
Can't
And that's what you came out of the movie with?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can't top Elton John in terms of ridiculousness, and this
Yeah.
Movie definitely captures that.
They named the robot dog Benny and the Jets.
That made me so happy.
Yeah.
Was the one dog's name the Jets or just
I think it was
Jets?
just
It was
Jet.
Jet.
Yeah.
It was just
Pardon
Jet.
me. But yeah, it's a very silly movie. I like that they kept the same level of craziness,
Yeah.
but at the same time, the first one still had somewhat of a message where it was still the story of like My Fair Lady. We're gonna take this person out of the underground, make them posh, make them into the gentleman that they're supposed to be, and then in the end, the third act of the first movie is pretty bonkers, but it's completely earned. This one I feel like starts off bonkers, takes a couple weird dips where you're supposed to get emotions for some things, but it also dismisses a lot of the characters that you knew and loved. But you could also just say that that's just subverting the normal Bond plots, which is most of what this movie is trying to do.
Yeah, and I think that's the cohesion of the story. I think is what you're talking. Like that's one thing. Is like for the first Kingsman, I very clearly saw like the plot line was used. It all made sense. It tied together well. The second movie, The Golden Circle, it was still that. It was fun. I enjoyed it thoroughly, but like the story that kind of kept it together was not as earned because it didn't have that it didn't have that coming of age or whatever it is, like entering into another world. It was just like, we're in this world, we're doing the same thing over again, which is completely fine.
And like one like the devices they used was like the head thing that brought people back to life. Not like back to life, but like, you know, when they got shot in the
Basically
head.
back to life.
Yeah, essentially. And that kind of was like weird, but it's a part of the universe, you
Yeah.
know, and it was
We doing
just...
But it's-
spoilers?
Yeah,
Yes.
we're doing
done.
spoilers.
Yeah, it's all spoilers.
But it's weird that they would take basically the only stakes from the first movie, because you knew that the world wasn't going to end, was the Colin Firth getting shot in the head, and that was the emotional pull. Then they immediately tell you, well, that doesn't matter because we can solve it. But at the same time, they kill off Roxy, they kill off the dog, they kill off every other member of Kingsman that's not Mark Strong as Merlin and Taron Egerton. At the same time where they tried to introduce stakes by killing off other characters, I wouldn't be surprised if all these other characters showed up again in the next movie with robot bodies or something, and it's like Futurama where it's just their head in a jar.
I'd say one of my real issues with it was when Galahad instantly knew Whiskey was on like working for the other stuff, or not essentially working on their side, but no real explanation as to how he knew that, and it just came out to be true. And they didn't really explain how he had any sort of insight.
Yeah, he was just like, he's the bad one. And it's like, alright. I feel like that's, of all the things in the movie, that still stays with logic a little bit, whereas there's a lot of weird fucking things that happen. And I feel like they're trying to set up this criminal underground, but at the same time, I feel like if there was any tie-ins to the first movie, it would have made it have a little more weight. And I like the first movie had a lot of political statements with saving global warming. They literally blow up Obama's head because he's one of the people who opts into this program. And in the second movie, they're like, yeah, we're gonna win the war on drugs, we're gonna kill everyone. But I feel like it doesn't have the same impact as the first one, especially since in the end,
No,
they just drop off drones of antidote.
I do think it had the similar global impact because it was the fact that the idea that the established government was willing to sacrifice millions of people just to win the war on drugs.
Yeah.
So instead of legalizing, whatever drugs, Poppy's drugs, it basically saying the president of the United States, the leader of the free world, is willing to sacrifice a third of 100 million people in his own nation, not to mention globally, just so he can win the war on drugs. Because if you do drugs, that means you're the scum of the earth.
Yeah.
That was what the political statement was.
Yeah, but I feel like it doesn't. I don't know. It feels unearned at a certain point.
I feel like it was trying to be topical, but like it kind of was telling us things that we already knew. Like we already know that like a lot of like common people abuse drugs and like use it, and maybe not even abuse it. But.
Yeah. I feel like we're being kind of down on the film, but I feel like it's necessary criticism. Maybe just go around and just say specific things that we liked, or just the strongest parts that you felt of the movie.
I mean, I can't. Man, it's hard to quantitatively or qualitatively say this. Like the fun factor of the first film was still there. Like I still, even though I was like, oh, this doesn't really connect, I enjoyed seeing the crazy, ridiculous weapons, like the lasso, the part where they're swinging on like the gondola thing. I was like, this is ridiculous.
Like the choreography is so much fun. The soundtrack's a lot of fun, and I think that like a lot of the actors are really like putting out what they can for it.
Yeah.
And it's even too when they like reference the first thing where they do the manners maketh the man.
And he misses.
Yeah.
And he misses.
It's great.
And
And then they basically use what you think is going to be a callback to introduce the skills of the new character, Whiskey. And I feel like that's a big benefit, is they introduce a lot of characters, but they don't do it in a way where like Suicide Squad did it, where they're all disposable, you don't really care about what's going on.
he
but
can
yeah,
climb anything.
Exactly. There's no Slipknots in this movie. The only real downside is they introduce all these characters, and then half of them, for stakes, need to be bedridden. Channing Tatum shows up to...
He
Yeah,
had just
knocked
much
down.
screen time as he
Channing
did
Tatum gets
in
some
Hateful
hype.
Eight.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Sorry.
almost like one of the top billed casts, and he's in it for 5 minutes.
Exactly. Well, it's just because he's on a hot streak. But yeah, the action of the movie was great. Just the visual styling
Yeah.
was amazing.
It's
and
still
just
definitely over
like
the top like the first one.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
like-
I loved Poppy's
Like-
Poppy Land, where it's
Yeah.
like the 50s nostalgia. And
Even
it's just
with the sets in like brewery, I don't know what you call that. Like,
Statesman.
Oh yeah, the
Statesman.
Statesman
oh my
Brewery.
gosh, Statesman! I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I was thinking of the hat that they wear.
Yeah. And it fit perfectly. Like if you have the idea of like the Kingsman tailor shop being the the posh idea of a Richmond, of course America's gonna be the alcoholics. It's like
Gun
we
tone.
did it. Welcome to America.
That'll make you want to slap your mom.
Direct line from the movie. Yeah, I'm excited
Dude
because
was
they
so good.
exactly and also Jeff Bridges, amazing job as always.
Yeah.
Jeff
Yeah.
Bridges has never been bad, no matter how bad the movie he's in is. And they did a great job just world building. And even if it didn't amount to as much as the first one, you don't care as much about the new characters, or you're kind of still. I'm personally just bitter about the amount of people that they killed off from the
Yeah.
first one, and it's especially when he cares so much that he's not gonna shoot the dog in the first one, and then in the second one the dog dies and immediately he's like, I'm sad,
And then he
but I'm
gets a
not
new
that
one.
sad. Yeah, and then he just gets a new
get a
puppy.
new one.
Yeah. Also, the Glastonbury thing kind of felt like Glastonbury was like, here's a couple $1 million, mention us. But yeah, the fingering scene was phenomenal. And I, out of context, sounds awful. Yeah, I feel like you can only really say that about Alien Covenant. And this one.
I'll do the thing.
Yeah. And connection to Alien Covenant, Country Roads Take Me Home, John
And
Denver,
Logan Lucky.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Logan Lucky.
I remember
Every one of those
Song of
movies,
the
yeah.
year.
I love
Catherine Waterston was in Alien, Covenant, and Logan Lucky, same song. Channing Tatum is in Logan Lucky in this, same song.
When-
Cinematic universe. Alien is in the Kingsman universe, and so is Logan Lucky.
Now connect the sign.
Yeah. Oh, it's...
Hold on. We connecting the signs right
I
now?
think we can connect the signs.
Well, if we think about it,
If you think about it, you mean. Do you need some time? I have one comment about this because that Country Road song in the theater in the group that I went with, they were like, but it's not Kentucky, it's West Virginia. they got the
Biggest
wrong
critique.
state. They're
Like
like,
the 3 movies this year
yeah.
came out with that song, and it has a plot device.
They're like,
There's a
everyone
sound.
just stands
Yeah.
up and leaves. Nope, it's not West Virginia. We gotta get out of here. Yeah.
Like, deep in thought.
topic
Well,
of the movie.
I think
I believe
we
that's
should give
6
a word
steps
out
to
to our
signs.
sponsors, which are Kingsman Tailors.
Oh yeah, it's Kingsman
and,
Taylor and Statement Whiskey.
Yep.
Statesman Whiskey.
Send us more. I think the one thing when you think about Kingsman, the first thing you come back to is always like the church scene. It's
Yeah.
unfortunate that I don't know, there's nothing comparable to that
It
in
sounds
the
like-
Golden Circle.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Because it was just so memorable.
You can essentially expect an over-the-top James Bond parody film.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sounds fucking awesome.
Not to the point of Austin Powers, but it's still it's something.
It's
fun.
something that
It's
you
not-
can still take
um,
seriously.
It's not trying to be a comedy.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just funny at times.
Exactly. And it's just you have a great cast. You have people who are more serious actors like Mark Strong, generally Pedro Pascal, whether he's in Narcos or Game of Thrones. And then you have people who sometimes play more comedic roles, Jeff Bridges and Channing Tatum. And speaking of Channing Tatum was in a movie earlier this year with Adam Driver. And Adam Driver was in Silence with Andrew Garfield, who was in Hacksaw Ridge, directed by Mel Gibson, who was in Signs. Signed, sealed, delivered. It's Signs.
Well done. We gave you enough time for that one. And I think that's the heart of Kingsman, and I guess it is based on, I guess, a graphic novel as well. Which
Yeah,
I
the Mark
wasn't aware.
Millar. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know.
Yeah, and Mark Millar was a screenwriter for
Oh,
this
really?
movie, and he works.
That's
he
cool.
specifically he only wanted to come back to do it if Matthew Vaughn was going to do it, and I think Matthew Vaughn has made some of the best comic book adaptations in the last couple of years. X-Men First Class, Kick-Ass, Kingsman 2. He also did Layer Cake, which is a phenomenal movie with Tom Hardy and Daniel Craig.
Okay.
Basically got Daniel Craig the role of Bond. That's right, we're talking about Bond. But yeah, it's a very fun movie. And
No.
yeah, there was not a point in the movie where I was like, I wish this was over. But as I left, I was like, this isn't gonna sit with me as long and as fondly as the first one.
Yeah, no. And again, the reason that is because you go into the first Kingsman and you're like, okay, this is gonna be some kind of really out there kind of spy film, and it turns out it hits those like comedic marks. It hits those like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that just happened.
Yes.
It's insane. Whereas this one, when you're coming back to it, you're like, oh, I want to experience the same
Exactly.
thing, and you do, but the expectation's already been set.
Yeah. And I feel like the first one also did a great job of, we're gonna take this thing that you may think you're gonna know what you're gonna see, and we're just gonna completely flip it. So at the same time, people who like spy movies like it because it's a subversion of the spy movie. But my mom, who will not sit through a full James Bond movie or most other action movies, sat down and adored the hell out of the first movie. I don't know if I can recommend the second one to her because it was a lot more violent, it was a lot more over the top, it was a lot of, we're just gonna keep adding this stuff until you kind of get tired of it. And I feel like you need to fully understand the comedy
Yes.
to
Oh, yeah.
understand that where the movie's going. It's like
Yep.
if you watch the second Evil Dead thinking it's gonna be a straight up horror movie, you're doing it wrong.
Mhm.
And there shouldn't be a learning curve for a mainstream movie, and obviously it's doing well.
Yeah. It's,
I think it's probably still #1 in the box office. Don't quote me. Excuse me.
Depending on when this comes
Whiskey
out.
goes in, whiskey comes out. Speaking
the
of whiskey,
movie.
yeah.
Statesman Whiskey, brought to you by Statesman Whiskey.
Statement whiskey.
That's one. And also, I do want to mention Statement Whiskey. I do want to mention like one thing that I thought was a huge like it was a spoiler in the trailer kind of thing, like
Oh,
the appearance of Galahad again. Why?
Yeah,
He was
I-
on the freaking marquees and everything. Like,
I
it
really
was-
wish that they just kept that, like, just saved it.
Yeah.
You know, I felt like that the
Oh,
reveal would have
oh,
been
oh.
so much more like memorable and like so like valuable. But
Yeah, and there's another thing I brought up to you earlier. When they first show him, it's the same scene that you've already seen in the trailers, where it's him, you see him through a glass pane and he's shaving, and I thought, oh, Channing Tatum is tricking them into thinking he's still alive, because this is the same shaving scene we saw in the first movie, and then they cut the camera around and he's there. And part of me was like, oh, they're gonna do something different. They trick the audience into thinking that he's in the movie a lot, and it's just like Steven Seagal in Executive Decision, where he flies out of the plane in the first 5 minutes. But yeah, I thought it was gonna do one of those. I'm happy they brought him back, because he's one of the best parts of the first one, but at the same time I feel like it devalues the sacrifice that he made,
Yeah.
and it also gets rid of some of the comedy from the first one when Sam Jackson says, this isn't that kind of movie, shoots him right in the head.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're right.
it's because it's that kind of movie. Even if he didn't explain his whole plan to him,
Yeah.
it came back to life.
Yeah.
I feel like the first one's set up. It's not that kind of movie because we're gonna go over the top. We're not gonna fall into the exact tropes, but we're still gonna follow the same narrative.
Yep.
And then the second movie was, we're gonna follow those plot tropes that you know so well. Poppy explains her whole plan to everyone. She
On
comes out
national
across,
TV.
on national television.
Yeah.
Fox News.
International. Yeah.
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 And
And that,
it's odd, and I don't know why.
maybe it's trying to play with the audience emotions before they get in there, being like, oh, you're gonna see your favorite character again. Maybe you'll see something you don't expect, but by the time you're in that advertising phase and you know what your film is, like, you should have that. You have to have some correlation between your advertising and your movie. But again, advertising, I guess, is decided by the studio, whereas like the director of the movie, I'm sure, has very different opinions.
Yeah.
I also feel like they were trying to like set that movie, like make it different than the first one. You know, because like I know like a lot of films try to go back to the first one and recreate that same feeling and stuff. And
Of course it would.
the
True.
same plot points. And I think they were trying to mix it up a little bit by going over the top in the beginning.
Yeah.
Like going totally all out.
Also, the meat grinding scenes are
Oh,
pretty
oh,
goddamn.
yeah, okay,
That was
so-
awesome. I don't
yeah,
know. I just
alright.
thought that was really crazy.
Yeah, one thing that we definitely need to discuss is the fact that this movie opens pretty much in the first like 20 minutes, wherever it is, with a person. The two men go to talk to Poppy. One of them is put in a meat grinder, ground into a burger, cooked, and then the other guy that he walked in with ends up eating that burger.
The worst pies in London.
Literally, that is the first 20 minutes you see cannibalism in a show. That's like one of those things that's like, wow, how is this okay? But they did it, and you're like, I'm not happy that it was. How do you put that in a movie? Cannibalism.
There are points in time in this movie where it's like, I can't believe that the things that happened in the first movie happen in the same universe as the things that happen in the second movie.
And that's one thing. That's why I don't think that Kingsman is going to be able to continue, because you can't
Third
have.
one's already in progress.
Really?
Yeah.
I
This
don't-
one's making a lot of money, and everyone's basically the same level we are, where they're like, yeah, it's not amazing, but it's fun.
Yeah, I guess
And
so.
I think he's trying to get more focus for the next one, because he's listening to
Okay.
it, and some people did refer to it as like, oh, James Bond took 40 years to get to Die Another Day, and Kingsman only took one sequel, and he's taking that to heart because he's someone who actually cares.
Okay.
Yeah. This is a little silly question, but I think it's worth asking. Who's your favorite Kingsman? Favorite Statesman? They don't have to be someone who lives. They just the impact that they had on you.
Okay, I think.
Also, do you prefer Sam Jackson from the first movie or?
Oh, Sam Jackson, I think was
Okay.
better. Sam Jackson's definitely better than Poppy. But in terms of favorite, Kingsman is difficult because, of course, you're gonna go like, it's really between Eggsy and Galahad, I guess.
I would disagree.
You think Merlin is a?
I would say Merlin's my favorite because I feel like of all of them, he's had the most interesting arc because Eggsy started off not counting his home life, but even kind of with counting that, he's gone from the worst to the best at what he does without really any sort of mentorship past a certain point. And I feel like he's just basically similar to what we talked about with the Blade Runner. He's the chosen one. And I feel like Mark Strong's character of Merlin is just, he's the guy at the computer. He wants to do more. At the end of the first movie, he gets to have a gun, he gets to fly a plane, he gets to do all this interesting stuff. The second movie, he's pushed into field work. They give him a sense of humor. He drinks too much. He says, oh, it's only appropriate to cry one tear in solitude. Starts sobbing. And then he has the perfect send-off. He sacrifices himself by standing on a landmine. And instead of accepting his own death and just dying by his lonesome, he goes, I'm going to bring as many of these fuckers with me as I can. Sings Country Roads, Take Me Home, accompanied by orchestra, and blows up a bunch of villains. Copyright infringement, you better stop. John Vendinger will come back.
Kentucky!
No, I see what you mean. But then again, like, The Statesman, I did enjoy them. Did I ever have an emotional connection to them? No.
Yeah, well, there's like 3 of them.
Yeah.
But I think
they tried to make us have an emotional connection with Halle Berry, which I was like, whatever.
Because
I totally just remembered she was in the film, by the way.
Yeah, because she had that connection with Merlin, which you're saying is the same character arc.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And she gets in.
Yeah.
Spoiler.
She does get it. But I feel like it's weird that they show Halle Berry a lot. They show...
you have Halle Berry, you're going to put her in the film.
Well, which they wouldn't. You ever see Die Another Day? She's terrible. Take away her Oscar. They show a lot of Halle Berry. They show a lot of Pedro Pascal, and then they show Channing Tatum, and then Jeff Bridges is there in the background. But at the same time, every time Jeff Bridges is there, he's chewing at the scenery. He's amazing. Rubbing whiskey on his mustache so he's got something to smell all day. Gorgeous. I would have to say he's my favorite because he's just... There's just something about him where you don't have all the answers, but you're like, this man intrigues me.
Yep. Okay. I see what you...
Becca, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, my favorite
of
course, is Colin Firth.
Colin Firth from What a Girl Wants?
No, from Pride and Prejudice. Of course. And then Jeff Bridges. So.
That's fair. Dan?
So obviously Jeff Bridges.
Okay. As long as we can all agree.
Can't not be Jeff Bridges.
Yeah.
And then, if we can go to first movie Kingsman, I'm gonna say Michael Caine's character, whose name I can't remember, just because it's Michael Caine. We're going with people.
Wasn't it Arthur?
Yeah, I think it was Arthur.
It
was King Arthur.
So I'm gonna go
And then they replaced him with Gandalf. Not Gandalf. Dumbledore. Who then dies in 2 seconds.
Oh,
Michael Gambon.
If
Wow.
we're only going with...
Don't know why they got him for 2 seconds of we're having a meeting.
Old Englishman?
Old Englishman. But I feel like Michael Caine, they gave him something to do and there was treachery. And it was funny. I thought it would have been great if in the first or second Kingsman they somehow put like Roger Moore or something in it. Can't do it now. Rest in peace, Raji. You're the best Bond.
However, if we are only using Kingsman 2 characters, Mark Strong.
Yeah.
Because again, the character arc was very, very well done.
I mean, in terms of Kingsman 2, like I said, you'll watch Kingsman 1, you'll like Kingsman 1, you're gonna see Kingsman 2.
Yeah.
But, in my opinion, in my personal opinion, Kingsman 1 is the better film because it just is. Like, it's not playing off of it. It is establishes its own not genre. It establishes its own sphere inside the genre. Exactly. And that's exactly what it needs to do. Kingsman 2 expands on that, but doesn't really live to the first one.
I feel like it suffers from doing the sequel wrong, where there's movies like The Dark Knight, where Batman Begins has set everything up, and the second one could realistically do whatever it wants, and then there's a third one to end it. Same thing with Star Wars and Empire, First Class, Days of Future Past. All of these, you can do whatever you want in the second one, as long it can go as crazy as possible, as long as you resolve it in the third one. Two Towers, same thing. This one, it allowed the setup, and then the second one, it was like, if 10's the limit, let's go to 15. And there's never a point where you're like, yeah, this is the same style. Like, it aesthetically, it looks similar, but it just goes so far in every direction where I feel like if every single scene took a couple steps back, it would have been a better movie. There's some over-the-top scenes that I'm happy they kept. I personally loved the meat grinder at the end.
Yeah.
I feel like if they hadn't set up the thing in the beginning, and she had just been like, oh yeah, I make my own burgers or whatever, and then they have Pedro Pascal's character eventually end up in there. It's like Chekhov's gun. You put it in the beginning, and then it pays off in the end.
Yeah.
I feel like that would have been a bit neater.
Yeah, I really feel like they jumped the gun.
Yeah.
And I feel like that plot point in the beginning could have been a great way to set up the third film, honestly, but
I did not know about the third film. I'm amazed that there's gonna be a third film.
yeah.
I mean,
It's
mean,
funny,
I'm not
but
complaining.
fine.
these keep
but
making. I
it's
mean,
gonna be
technically,
fun.
at the end of the first one, half of the world's population has attacked itself
That's why I
and
didn't.
gotten really hurt.
I did not expect. That's what the thing too. They never address. Oh my gosh, I'm getting really negative. They never address the fact that every world leader dead.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Never addressed it.
Well, there's still a Prince of Sweden.
Oh yes, there is.
It's like they
name
just
is
did
Taron
like
Egerton.
an almost reset.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's another thing where you can't take it too seriously because it's there to be the mockery of the James Bond.
Exactly.
Where every previous movie there's a threat of World War III, and in the next movie they're like, we could have never expected World War III. And I feel like to that point it's strong at being meta, but it's very easy to take that as a plot hole as opposed to a joke.
I get behind that.
Yeah. So I think in all we'd say Kingsman is a fun movie.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely.
Would
If
you
you like-
recommend it?
Yeah, if
Sure,
you've seen Kingsman
yeah.
1, definitely see it again.
It's harmless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If the first one's an 8, this one's a 6.
That's fair.
Those are
You can
my
watch.
exact sentiments,
Yes.
and I'm happy you said that. On that note, I think we're going to bring this episode to a close,
Thank you very much for listening.
Yeah.
and
Thank you,
manners
Statesman.
maketh man.
Oh, manners maketh the man, and thank you, Statesman, for sponsoring this episode.